Hi, everybody. I think that you can probably not see me. And so I just want to quickly change to see what is affecting my laptop. I think my camera is disabled. Let me actually just fix the problem for 2 seconds. Because you can hear me. I know you can all hear me, but I don't know if you guys can see me. And I think that's because my camera has disabled itself. So just while I figure that out, everyone, welcome to the live lesson. We are going to be doing a paper 2 revision session. We are going to be focusing in mainly on human evolution as well as some protein synthesis. But I know most of you really want to hear some human evolution work. And so that is what we are going to do. And I just wish I could figure out why my camera is not working. It says my web camera. Let me see here. Otherwise, you don't have to see me because you can hear me. But what I can do is I can still obviously share my screen and you guys can obviously see that. Let's do that. Let's just dive in quickly. So I just want everyone to know that you won't be able to see me physically. It seems to be like my camera is not transmitting, which is annoying, but I know that you can still all hear me. And I want to remind everybody to switch on their settings as high as possible so that you would be able to view the screen clearly as possible. And so that when we get into the lesson, you can see the questions I'm going to be doing. And I think without further ado, I'm going to go through some questions that you guys have requested. And I have taken all of my questions via StudyClix. And as I've said to you before, StudyClix is a great platform. Not only does it have all of the topics organized alongside, there is a whole bunch of extra study material. There is our live lesson from earlier in the week. You can see there we had our live lesson together. And then just like all sorts of like really great things are uploaded for you to use. Besides past papers, StudyClix also has quizzes as well. And you can select what quizzes you want to do and it'll set it up for you. But today we are going to be using StudyClix as a revision tool. And I'm going to switch my screen now over to that so that we can start with our past papers. So I know my screen looks a little crazy right now. It's because I've zoomed all the way out, but actually what you are looking at is one giant question. And I'm going to dive in first things first with some, what do I call this now? We're going to dive into some human evolution. And I just feel like I'm frozen, everyone. So just give me a quick second. I'm going to stop sharing because it looks like I need to go out and then back in again. Apologies for the delay. While I just wait to go back into my web browser, my whiteboard, I'll be looking at the questions alongside. If you guys want to get hold of StudyClix, you simply just Google StudyClix. There is a free version of StudyClix as well as a paid for version as well. And your paid for version gives you access to absolutely everything. So not just some of the questions, you get access to all of the questions, all of the quizzes, absolutely everything. And if you still want to watch our lesson 1 from the other day on Tuesday, then please know that it is uploaded for you to see. Okay, I think we are back in business. I want to say we are back in business. I'm going to share my screen with you. So let's get the show on the road. Let's see if I zoom in here. Yes, okay, right. So a lot of you requested in my Q&A section to do human evolution, and I just want to start off today's lesson slightly differently than what I did the other day, which is I just want to point out what is important and what's not important when you're studying your skulls, and then we'll quickly do a question section. So a lot of you don't know what you need to know about the skulls, and so I'm going to point them out now. In front of you, we have a gorilla, we have a Africanist, Australopithecine, and we also have a Homo sapien. Now, what I would like everyone to know about these skulls is the following. I need you to know all of the structures that make them. Can you see this, everybody, before I continue? Can you see my screen? I'm just reading the comments. Can you see my screen, everybody? No? Yes? Can we see? Lovely. Okay. Love it. Right. So these are 3 skulls. And maybe it goes blank, I think, when I change between screens. Don't worry, I won't be changing screens again. So these are some skulls. We have, as I was saying, a gorilla, we have a Australopithecine, and we have a Homo sapien. So when you're studying your skulls, everybody, these are the things that I need you to focus your attention on. You do not need to know when the skulls were discovered, like 3.7 million years ago, and you don't need to know like the specifics of the lengths of their arms and all of that stuff, okay? What do you actually need to know? Number one, you need to pay attention to the size of the cranium. That's really important because if you think about it, the cranium gets bigger with time. So we're moving from the gorilla to the human. The next thing that you need to know is the teeth and the fact that the canines, and I'm just going to write here, canines get smaller with time. So you can actually see they reduce smaller here, and then they are the smallest in Homo sapiens. Another thing that you need to look out for is the brow ridge. Look how big it is here, and it gets smaller, and then it's basically non-existent in Homo sapiens. The next thing is something that a lot of people get wrong. It's called prognathism, and a lot of students don't know what that is. I like to remind my students that it is the size and the slope of the face, and I would say slash jaw, right? So it's like both of those things together. Technically, it's also the jaw, right? Now, when we look at prognathism, we're looking at how large is the jawbone, and as you can see, it gets smaller and smaller with time. Another thing you might notice is the slope of the face. Gorillas have very sloped faces. Australopithecines have less sloped, and humans have a flat face. I would like you to know, NB, star this one in your notes, the prognathism. It's really important because it links to many different things, and it also links to a question we're going to practice later. But you are either non-prognathous or prognathous. You're either you have it or you don't have it. I'm just going to move my page over so you can see it there. You either have it or you don't have it. Okay, there is no in between, everyone. Okay, lovely. Right. So, oh, one more thing. Sorry, I forgot about this. Let's actually talk about the what would you call these? Your foramen magnum, everybody. Something else is this little entrance point here. Do you notice that it starts to move more forward? So when we talk about the foramen magnum, we say it is more forward. We don't talk about central. That word is a no. We do not use the word central. We say more forward or more backward. We know if it moves. We don't say central. One last thing also is the shape of the palate. This is a rectangular shape. Do you notice it becomes more of a U shape and then finally parabolic like that? So it becomes more curved, and that has to do with, again, prognathism. So the jaw is linked to the palate. So the jaw and the palate, they go together. Okay. Now that we kind of have a good kind of background of what we're going to be doing with the skulls and the limit and like how much you actually need to know, everybody. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a past paper question. Now, these questions, they do come from StudyClix, and I'm actually going to dive straight into a past paper question. This one came from 2023. This is November, paper 2. And if I'm just going to move this a little bit bigger so we can see nice and clearly, let's walk through the question and then we will look at the memo. So it says the diagrams below show skulls and pelvises of different hominids. And so we have H. sapien and A. sediba. We also have some unknown pelvises as well. And I always encourage my matrics to familiarize themselves with the pictures first. And then answer the questions. And just out of the corner of my eye, Darius is asking, will you be able to watch the live if we can't right now? Yes, absolutely. You can come back anytime to join the live and watch this one. So don't you stress. So what we're going to then dive back into the question, and I want you to prepare the question. So in other words, we already know that this is sediba and sapien, but we also don't really know who these pelvises belong to. Already, I should be able to determine an order of pelvises. So like from most to least developed, or most like a human, least like a human. And looking at these three pelvises, this one in the center, B, is the most unusual because it is long and narrow. And the moment you see something that is long and narrow, you should know that we are looking at an organism that is probably going to be more ape-like. But then if you look at C and A, they have become a lot more short and broad. Okay, and so we need to keep those two words in our minds when we think about sapiens and specifically Homo sapiens. A is not quite like C. It's a little bit more elongated, like it goes up higher, and it's not as wide. So it's actually quite safe to say that if we ordered these letters from left to right, being most ancient or primitive to most developed, I would go B is the most primitive, then A, and then C. Okay, so I'm going to keep that in the back of my head, and now I'm going to go through some of the questions. So number 1 says, state the genus of A. sediba. Now, you don't actually need to learn anything about sediba according to the study guidelines. All you need to know is what group it belongs to. So you do need to know Australopithecus, and that's the answer for this. Okay, so you just need to know your hominid genus names. So Australopithecus and Homo is the two groups that you definitely need to know. Now, for number 2, it says describe the shape of the spine in a Homo sapien. It's only 1 mark, so we're not going to write a paragraph on this one. And we're going to say it's S-shaped, right? S-shaped. Now, that's an easy one. That's just like a knowledge question. So let's move on to some of the more chunkier questions. And you'll see why I also chose this one. If you think this is easy, wait until we get to the later questions. It then says for number 3, A. sediba is thought to be a transitional species. State what is meant by transitional. It's for 2 marks, which means you need to mention 2 things. Now, a lot of you probably out there are thinking, well, how do I get 2 marks? And I don't understand how to provide that answer. And that is where I think StudyClix is really different. And I've actually put the answers below here for us to reference. And I'm going to go over to answer 3, because as you notice, when you go onto StudyClix, not only do they have the memo, which is what you see here where you can see the ticks, but they also have these teacher tips. And they are written by teachers who mark your work at the end of the year. And they need to know they give you like inside information on how to structure your answer. So the question was, what is a transitional fossil? What does that mean? And essentially, it is an organism that is an intermediate or has a common characteristic between two genera or two species. So literally, it's a transitional species or organism. There are probably many different synonyms for the word intermediate, like the word in between, or is shared by two, like that also means common. And this bit over here is important because you can't just say organisms, you have to say groups, species, genre, something along those lines. And that's what's going to get you 2 marks. Now, you would also, if I go back to the question, you may notice it says state. It's not explain. You don't need to explain yourself. So luckily, it's just making 2 stated points. One, it's an organism that is found in between 2 genre or 2 species, and it shows characteristics of both. That's your statement, and you leave it as is. For number 5, this is also a simple one. Give the letter of the pelvis that would be represented by sediba. And as I kind of alluded to earlier, if you arrange the pelvises from most developed to least, humans are most likely going to be C, as we can visualize here. This is definitely going to be C, is going to be humans, but we need sediba. Sediba is a transitional fossil, which A represents a lot better because it's showing characteristics of a group or 2 groups. So I would put the letter A. Then everyone's worst nightmare, and I say this to all of my matrics all of the time, they don't know what to say for explain. Like you choose and you go, cool, A. And then you have to explain why you chose A. And so people are a little bit like, oh, I don't know what to say. How do I explain myself? Well, remember, if you've been to one of my lives before, you know that you need to make a statement and you need to make a reason for 2 marks. Some people also like to use cause and effect, which is also like a perfect way to structure it as well. But once again, I'm going to rely on my StudyClix to show me how to perfectly structure my answer for number 5. So I'm going to zoom in on number 5. And you'll actually see that there are 3 options, which are definitely possible in any memo. So if we want to look for statement and reason, we can look at the pelvis is intermediate statement. Reason because it's between B and C. Or A has a shorter, wider pelvis than B statement, but not as short and wide as C. Reason. A longer, narrower pelvis than C. So A has a longer, narrower pelvis than C statement, but not as long and narrow as B. Reasoning. And often you are using, as the teacher tip suggests here, you are using visual information from the diagram to help answer the question. You really need to use what you can see here. And yes, you are allowed to write a comparison. You are allowed to say, it's shorter and wider, but not as short, or it's longer and narrower, but not as long and narrow. So you are allowed to use those like comparative words. That's okay. You don't need to worry so much about like feeling like you're not giving enough information, because you are. And last but not least, I chose this particular question because of this very, very last question, which I think even my most accomplished matrics would struggle to answer. And that is, explain the significance in the change in prognathism from A sediba to H sapien for 5 marks. Even the most accomplished matrics would struggle to answer this last question for many reasons. Number 1, they don't know how to structure the explain question for 5 marks. Nothing has changed, everybody. You are still giving a statement, except this time you need to give 4 reasons. The next thing that matrics are going to overlook is this word over here, significance. A lot of people and matrics think that it means importance, but it actually doesn't. What it actually means is, what is the consequence? In other words, what is the outcome? Explain the if you substitute the word significant, like if I just got rid of that, you will actually write a better answer if we ignore that word. And we said, explain the consequence, because it actually doesn't mean the same thing. Consequence mean what are the consequence of your actions? What is the consequence of the change in the skull? That's very different to saying what's the importance of the change. They're not the same thing. So what I want to then show you is the perfect 5-mark answer on how you are going to explain yourself. And I want you to take note of this if you didn't know how to do this in the first place. So you can start with effects, as we can see here, and you can end in cause, or you can start with a cause. So I'm going to start with the cause at the bottom and say the following. Why did the prognathous jaw change? Well, it changed because the diet changed. We cooked food, right? That can be your statement or your cause. And now let's look at all the consequences of that. Well, when we cooked food, right, your chewing muscles got smaller. Your teeth got smaller. This led to a smaller jaw. And because of the smaller jaw, Homo sapiens had a non-prognathous jaw, whereas Sediba still has prognathism. Why? Because Sediba didn't have fire. So now what you have is 5 potential marks. Let's go here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's 6 here. There are technically 6 points. You need 5 of these 6. I would say that you couldn't really write a good answer without giving the statement. And so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you need 4 of those 5 to get full marks. And so that's why it's about the significance. It's about the outcome, everybody. It is about the consequence of cooking food. The consequence of cooking food, the significance of cooking food is you got smaller muscles in your jaw. Therefore, smaller teeth were needed. You need to chew as much. And because you had less chewing and less teeth, basically, you only needed smaller jaws. And those small jaws led to non-prognathism, whereas Sediba had prognathism because they didn't have fire. They couldn't cook their food. Again, if you are aiming to get an 80%, this is probably where you need to focus your time and energy, everybody, because you're not spending enough time on these longer questions, these like harder questions, right? So I'm going to take a short break in terms of answering questions very quickly before we do another human evolution question, which is just waiting for us over here. And I'm going to ask the chat if anybody wants me to just quickly go over something in human evolution that's been bothering you. You can obviously type it in the chat. I can see it alongside and I'll be able to answer you directly, especially if it is something that you feel you're struggling with. What about human evolution? Maybe you're not so certain about what to study. Maybe you feel like you have so much to study in this section, what actually matters and what doesn't. I would love for you to tell me in the chat, what do you feel like matters? Or what do you feel you want to know that I haven't just covered, or you want me to cover a little bit more detail? You can put that in the chat and I can see that alongside. And I'm actually going to put it in the chat. Ask me about human evolution. Okay. Irvin wants to know, what actually should we concentrate on when doing human evolution? That's a great question. I'll make a list, shall I? And everyone can write it down. So when studying human evolution, I would focus on these things. I would focus on, number 1, structures that led to bipedalism. So what structures are those? That is the spine, the hips, And most importantly, the foramen magnum. You need to be able to tell me how each one of these things allows the organism to be bipedal. I also need you to know how to identify those things in a picture, right? You need to be able to look for the spine and tell me the shape. You need to be able to tell me about the hips. You need to tell me about the foramen magnum. Okay, that's important for human evolution. The second thing that I would study and I would spend some time with is I would make a table of the similarities and the differences between, let me just go back there, between apes and humans. I'd make a little table of that. And if you do have my cheat sheet, by the way, I have all of this already down for you. You actually just need to study what's in the cheat sheet and you'll know plenty. You'll need everything you need to know. The next thing I would know is out of Africa hypothesis. And I would know that, very important, everybody, in be it. I would know it from the exam guideline only. The exam guideline only. I would not use any of your textbooks whatsoever. Okay, I would use just the guideline to explain that. And last but not least, I would know the fossil names. And when I mean fossil names, I mean like, for example, Mrs. Play's Taung child. The names, the location they were found in, and who found them. So like Mrs. Play's was found in the Stackfontein caves, and you need to know the scientist who also found your fossil. So Lee Berger, Raymond Dart, Robert Broom, all of those guys, okay? I think that would be my focus. That's where the majority of your focus goes, those 4 things, and you'd actually be really well prepared, more so than I think you even imagined. I also think that students overstudy this section, and you'll see when we do the next question why I say that. But for now, I'm going to take one more question from the chat, which goes along as follows. I'm just looking for the other question that was in the chat now. Do you need to know all the, so Lebohuang wants to know, do we need to know all the differences between apes and humans? No. Can I tell you how many you really need to know of this one? I would say 4. 4 similarities, 4 differences. I'll take it one step further because I know what question they'll ask you. They're going to ask you to tabulate it. They're going to ask you to write a table of differences. So can you tabulate, if this is your table, and you've got human on the one side and you've got ape on the other side? I don't even think they would ask you to do 4, to be honest. Like 3 even is enough. Could you give 3 in the table? 3 differences. Like, for example, short arms, long arms, or freely rotating arms. Oh, not free. They're all both freely rotating. So long arm, short arm. What's another one? S-shaped spine, C-shaped spine. What's another one? Let's think. You could do the foramen magnum is more central. Sorry, not central. The foramen magnum is more forward. The foramen magnum is more backward. Like you just need to know 3 comparisons, and that's all you need. The list is too long, and you don't need to know that. And the last question I'll take from Zinande says, where can we find the exam guidelines? You can find the guidelines just on the internet. Like you can just actually Google it. You just Google the 2021 exam guideline. It must be the 2021 one. And by the way, the year doesn't mean it's expired. It means that's when it was published. That's a publishing year, not a expiry date, everybody. Okay. Right. So you need to know Reno 3. And I'm going to prove my point because let's look at this question. So we're going to dive into another human evolution question because this is where a lot of you are nervous about, like, what are they going to ask? And this is a classic example of they give you so much to work with that you could basically close your eyes and get full marks for this question. It's so easy. And so that's why I say people overstudy this section because you don't need to study it that much. But the diagram below shows one model of evolution in hominids. And so the most important part we must keep an eye on is the time over here. A lot of people overlook that and they forget that we're going from the earliest to the most recent. They think sometimes it's the other way around. And we go, okay, cool. We familiarize. We've got some individuals who are familiar here. We've got sapiens. We've got Homo erectus. We've got Australopithecus africanus. We have a mystery organism that we'll probably have to identify, but they've given us a clue. They use tools. And so now we're going to go into the questions. I'm going to show you how simple this question actually is and how many easy marks you'll be able to get. The first thing says, identify the type of diagram shown. And this, everyone, is a phylogenetic tree. Okay, phylogenetic tree. Easy, right? One mark. Boom, pow. Then it says, identify how many genera are represented in the diagram. Now, for some of you might be like, wow, that's easy. That seems silly. But a lot of people don't know what genre means, or the fact that there are actually only a few in this picture. So if we actually go back to the picture, genre, remember, refers to the genus. So there's the Homo genus in this picture, and there's the Australopithecine genus. And that's actually it, because if you look at the rest, these are all the Homo group. So that's all the same. So when we ask for how many, there is actually only 2. Okay, there's only 2 in this picture. And I'm going to ask you to think about it. What do you think is missing? What do you think is not missing? What do you think is the answer some people make? They go and they count all the species. They go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and they write down 8. That is actually one of the most common answers I've actually seen on this particular paper. And that's a massive error. And it's because people don't know what genus means. So they just think, oh, I'll just count how many individuals, or I'll count how many types there are. But that's actually not true, and you've done something wrong. Okay, next. It says, name the species represented by X on the diagram. Now, your clue is the fact that they used stone tools, and I think we have guessed what this is already, but it is Homo, or you could just write H, habilis. Okay, Homo habilis. That's it. And you don't need to know very much about these individuals. Please don't spend too much time studying about them and like what they did, where they lived, how long they were there for. You don't need to know actually very much about any of them. Then it says, name the species that shares a common ancestor with Homo erectus. So name the species that shares a common ancestor with Homo erectus. So we go back up to our diagram, and here is Homo erectus. And if we go backwards, so we go down and we look for a divergent point, this is a common ancestor here. The question is asking, who shares a common ancestor with Homo erectus? So who shares this common ancestor? If you go and look at the diagram, it goes to the right, but it also goes to the left, which would take us to Homo naledi. Homo naledi is our common ancestor on this diagram with Homo erectus. Okay, right, let's wrap this one up. Which species of the genus Homo is the only one in existence today? And I feel like this is a trick question because we should actually know this, that there is only one group of Homo species around, and that's going to be us, sapiens. Okay, we are the only genus of our group still around today. You could, I suppose, even confirm that by looking at the picture, because can you see the length of the line of Neanderthal sits below ours, which means they've become extinct. So I wouldn't worry too much, everybody, about that. That was an easy one. Again, simple, but I'm going to get to the harder ones soon. Number 5 says, name 2 forms of evidence that would have been used to support the information in the diagram. In other words, what kinds of evidence could we use to make this, this diagram? Like, how would we build it? So how do we actually make this? Well, the first one is fossils. I think everybody knows that that's a line of evidence. We could also use genetics. So we could do a DNA test. And because they mentioned tools, we probably could also use cultural evidence. Okay, so like tools changing over time. I just want you to notice, though, that do you see I didn't actually give any examples of fossils? I didn't give examples of genetics. Like I didn't say mitochondrial DNA or nuclear DNA. I didn't give any cultural examples like tools. That's because you don't have to. Okay, you don't have to give any examples. They're just asking for 2 forms of evidence. Now we get to the 2 more challenging questions. For number 6, it says the average cranial capacity, which means they're referring to, remember, the cranium, how big your head is, of Homo sapiens is 1,500 centimeters cubed, compared to 520 centimeters cubed in Africanus. Once again, explain the significance of the difference in cranial capacity for 3 marks. Again, this is an explain question, so we're going to need a statement with 2 reasons or a cause with 2 effects. But there's that mystery word again, significance. Again, I want you to just pretend like it's not there and think of the word consequence. What is the consequence of the cranial capacity being different in size? What's the product, right? What's the outcome of this? And so if again we refer to our lovely StudyClix memo answer, it's written out so nicely for us. We actually have 2 answers, to pick from. I'm going to zoom into both of them so you can see them nice and clearly. You are going to make your statement with your reasons. So statement, a large cranial capacity, statement or your cause, right, indicates a larger brain, reason, which indicates a larger intelligence or bigger intelligence, reason. So big cranial capacity equals big brain, lots of intelligence. Or if you wanted to answer in the opposite, which I wouldn't always suggest as a go-to, but that's okay. It says a small cranial capacity indicates a smaller brain and lower intelligence. And that's because you are talking about Australopithecus this time. And you're saying small capacity equals small brain equals lower intelligence. And that's how you always structure, once again, an explain question, as well as with your reasons. So you need your statement and your 2 reasons to get your full marks. Please remember about this whole significance thing. I think a lot of matrics get thrown by what the significance means and they don't answer it correctly. Now, a lot of you are asking me to go over the out of Africa hypothesis, and conveniently, it is our last question on this section. It says, explain how the fossils of Australopithecus africanus, species X, which remember is Homo habilis, and Homo erectus, are used to support the out of Africa hypothesis. And this is actually quite a chunky answer for 4 marks. So now this is where the knowledge coming from your exam guideline is going to help you tremendously. Okay? So what you're going to do is you are going to, number 1, you're going to take your guideline and you are going to select out your out of Africa hypothesis. Now I'm actually going to pull it up for everybody. So I'm just going to get it on my screen for you. And I'm going to actually paste it for you so that you can see it. And while I'm doing this in the background, I'm literally on the basic education website. And it's the first thing that pops up when I search for it. So if you don't have one of these, you can easily find it. And I'm just going to find the page now that I need. Let's see, where is Out of Africa? Because I actually want to show it to you so that we can study it at home. I'm just going to screenshot that. And I'm going to share it to myself. My iPad, and then you guys, I'm going to paste it in. Oh, let's go back into my explain everything. There we go. I wonder if I can paste something in. Oh, no. Okay. So let me paste it, but that's okay. I'm going to stop sharing, and I'm going to share a different page. Don't worry if the screen goes black. It will come back. And I'm just going to share my screen with you so that you can see the guideline. And don't worry, if it's not there, it is coming back, your screen. I'm just going to let everybody have a second to make sure that it loads. But what you are looking at now is the Out of Africa hypothesis from the guideline. Now, the question we just did now was explain how the fossils support Out of Africa hypothesis. And so here is your section on the fossils. We've got fossil evidence from each of the following. We have Ardipithecus. Now, we don't need to talk about this one because it's not in the question. The question asks about Australopithecus and it asks about Homo. So all you're going to answer is Australopithecus fossils are found only in Africa. And that part there is really important to say only in Africa. Homo fossils, like Homo habilis, are only found in Africa. The oldest, emphasize, if you don't write the word oldest, you don't get the mark. The oldest fossils of Homo erectus and Homo sapiens are found in Africa. So this whole bit here that I've highlighted in blue, and I think you can all see it now, that is what gets you 3 out of 4 for now, 4 out of 4 for your explanation. Because you're telling me that these fossils, so that's Australopithecus is only found in Africa, tick. Homo habilis is only found in Africa, tick. The oldest fossils of Homo erectus, tick, and sapiens, tick, are found in Africa. That's what you want. The final thing that will get you a tick is while younger fossils are found in other parts of the world. So the Out of Africa hypothesis essentially states that humans originated in Africa, and the proof is our oldest fossils are here, and some of the fossils are only found here. And then we migrated out of Africa to other places in the world, and now we use this to support that our species began in Africa and moved outwards, and we use fossils for that, specifically fossil evidence. Okay. So that's where you're going to get that from. And if you don't know this specific little piece of information, I suggest that you screen grab this, write it down, look for it in your exam guideline. Please, 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 everybody. I'm going to go back to my screen sharing of my lesson so that you can see my screen once again. But I'm going to ask the chat if there's anything else you want to know. Otherwise, what I want to do is I want to move on to my last topic for this evening, which is going to be about protein synthesis. And I always like to do a little warm-up round on this one when we change topic. And for those of you, while you're just sitting waiting, if there's any questions that you're giving me, for those of you who are looking for StudyClix and you are looking for the discount code because you were here the other day, I want you to know that those discount codes from my first live are still live. They're still active. If you haven't gone and watched my first video, you should go and check that one out. And you'll see that we play like an animal game where I reveal them. So that is where you can find them. They're embedded or they're in that actual video for you guys to watch. Otherwise, what I'm going to ask the chat is, let's do some warm-up questions with the multiple choice. So if we're doing protein synthesis and the question says, which of the following organelles is the site of protein? Is it A, ribosome, B, chloroplast, C, mitochondria, or D, centrosome? Let me know now in the chat, what do you think is the correct answer? Is it A, B, C, or D? Which of the following organelles is the site of protein synthesis? And I'm hoping that everybody gets this one right because it is an entry-level question. It's easy peasy. 2 marks in the bag for free. Okay, I'm seeing a lot of A's. We love that. We love to see that. That's a good sign. Anybody else going to answer? We only have a few answers this time. Because indeed, everyone, the correct answer is A, ribosomes. Which of the following organelles is the site of protein? It is most definitely a ribosome. Let's look at the second question. Which of the following is a product at the end of translation? Is it A, a DNA molecule, B, messenger RNA molecule, A, a protein, or C, a protein, or D, an amino acid? And there's definitely a distractor answer in this one for number 10, 1.1.10. Put it in the chat. What do you think is the correct answer for this new question? What is the product at the end of translation? Is it a DNA molecule, a messenger RNA molecule, protein, or an amino acid? There's a mixture of answers, which means that we're actually not sure. It's always so surprising. I'm so interested to see why we get some right and some wrong. Okay. Lots of different answers still coming in. I'm not going to tell you which is the right answer just yet. Which is the right answer, everybody? Because I see A and B and C and D, which means as a group, we don't actually know what the right answer is collectively. So I want to point out a very important thing. If you get this answer incorrect, once I tell you what the right answer is, it's because you don't know what translation is for, and you're confusing it with potentially transcription and DNA replication. And so the correct answer is, what do we make at the end of translation? A protein. The amino acid is a distractor, and it's because you attach an amino acid to another amino acid to another one and so on, and then you make a protein. So this is actually a distractor. These two are also to distract you because if you don't know what translation is, you will think that you make a DNA molecule, which is actually replication. And if you don't know translation, you might say this one, but that's a product of transcription. So you see, they're kind of sneaky, right? So again, if you're uncertain, when you use StudyClix, they have your answers, but once again, they give you the reasons why the other answers are incorrect, which I really love that, because often I feel like we do multiple choice and we don't actually know why the other answers are not correct. Like we're a little bit like, uncertain. And so that's what's really great about the StudyClix teacher tips that are included. All right, let's wrap this up and do one last question on protein synthesis, and I chose this particular question again. I always have a reason for why I choose the different questions. And so they always start off pretty easy, these questions, and then they get more and more challenging, right? So it says the diagram below represents a stage during synthesis of a certain protein. They've been very elusive here. They haven't even told you the stage. Immediately, you need to be able to identify this stage. You do not need to be wasting your time in the exam figuring out what you're looking at. The biggest clue of what stage of synthesis we're in here is this big guy over here. That gives you a clue as to what stage we're in. It also, this line of amino acids also should be a clue. I also want to point out there is 1, 2, and 3 here that probably are going to need labels or identifying them. And so what I often do is I like to tell my matrix to work on the picture first and then go backwards. In other words, and then answer your questions. So first things first, what stage of synthesis is this? First of all, let's get this very clear. This is translation. Ma'am, how did you know that? Well, number one, this giant thing over here, that's the ribosome. It's often drawn like a little chubby, like snowman. It sometimes looks like a coffee bean as well, like they draw it like this, like a little coffee bean. That's also how they draw it. So that's the ribosome. The next clue was what's at number 1, which is a tRNA molecule. That was my other clue. And for number 2 is pointing to what should be hanging off the edge here, which is the anticodon. Right. And by the way, a lot of matrics don't study protein synthesis enough, and it's actually easy marks. You don't spend enough time studying it. You think it's going to be easy, and then it shows you flames in the exams because they ask quite complicated questions. Generally, this is how it works, by the way. Top tip. The hard topics have easy questions. The easy topics have hard questions. That's how it goes, everybody. Right. So now that we've kind of prepared our picture, let's go through the questions. So easy peasy. Number 1, identify organelle. Number 3, we already know, is the ribosome. Number 2, describe the role of molecule 1 during this stage of protein synthesis for 2 marks. So what is molecule 1? Well, luckily for us, we already labeled it. It is tRNA. And the role of tRNA is to bring amino acids, right, in order to build a protein. And you could go into a little bit more detail if you felt like you needed to like elaborate and say, well, the tRNAs have anticodons and the anticodons match the codons, but it's only out of 2. So you don't need to give too much there. You simply need to describe that tRNAs bring the complementary amino acids that match the codons, and they make a protein when you put them together. All right, let's go on to question number 3. It says, give the sequence of nitrogenous bases at 2. So if I look up here at 2, they've given me the codons. So that means I've got G, G, A, but that's not the answer. You've got to work to the answer. The sequence I'm looking for is C, C, U. Let's remember there is no letter T, so it's only U's when we talk about RNA. So if you want to do your answer like this, that's fine, but you don't have to show you're working out. You can actually just leave this part out and just write CCU as well. Lastly, it says, give the sequence of nitrogenous bases on the DNA molecule that codes for histidine. So we have to actually go back and look at our picture. Here is histidine. Histidine has GUA. Now I'm going to take you on a little journey here. Because if the tRNA is, what was it again? I've already lost it. GUA. Okay. GUA. Then the mRNA is CAU. The final answer, which is what we're trying to get to, the DNA, so I'm working backwards, is GTA. Now, can you imagine how many people get this wrong? Because they're overconfident and they try and jump from here to here without working it out. Take your time, everybody. Don't rush and work it out on the page. Even if you scribble it on your actual question paper as working out, that's what I suggest you do so that you actually get to the correct answer and so that you work your way. Last but not least, for 3 marks, it's going to be our last little revision question for today. It says, during the synthesis of the same protein, there was a change in the amino acid sequence. Immediately you see change, you must think mutation. And that was because alanine or alanine was replaced with tryptophan. Explain the possible reason for this. Now, you're thinking, huh? I don't even know where to begin. Well, let's actually just look at what alanine is and tryptophan is. Let's see if they're actually in here. So if we look up here, alanine is GGG or CCC. So let's actually write that down. Alanine is GGG or CCC, right? That's what it is on the mRNA or the tRNA. Tryptophan, on the other hand, is GAA or CUU, just depending on what you're looking at here. So we've got tryptophan, we had what was it? I've already gone blank. I feel like I had the memory of a goldfish. CAA or CUU. Okay, so now you've got to explain the possible reason for this. It says that there was a change because now alanine or alanine is replaced with tryptophan. So what that then means is I actually want to specifically look at the mRNA. I want this over here. I want to refer to these letters only. So the CCCs and the CUU. And so what you're going to do is we're going to ignore the tRNAs because we don't need those. I want the mRNAs. And now in your answer for 3 marks, you are going to say, well, alanine, so for the first one, was CCC. It has now changed to CUU. So you acknowledge that in your answer. You must also acknowledge, because they want to know what is a reason, what's a possible reason for this? Well, it's a reason because you can get a mutation, right? And you can get a mutation during transcription, right? And that mutation during transcription can cause a letter change. And as you can see here, it should be CCC. It's now CUU. But again, I want to show you the perfect answer. And that's why people should study memos. We should spend time studying memos. And that is why if we have a look here for 3 marks, remember, it is also a explain question. So we're going to need for 3 marks, a statement and 2 reasons. Let's look at all the possible statements and reasons. So first things first, statement. A mutation occurred. Lovely. That mutation caused a change in the sequence of bases from GGG to GAA. You could also then say the codon changed from CCC to CUU. And finally, you could say a third option, because remember, we've got options here, causing the tRNA to bring a different amino acid. And so what we've got to emphasize here are our statements and our reasons. So I will elaborate again. The statement is, or the cause is, a mutation occurred. When that mutation occurred, it changed the DNA bases. Those DNA bases changed the mRNA bases. When those changed, it too created a different tRNA delivering a different amino acid. Now, that's how we get full marks. We structure our answers well, everybody. That's what's really important when it comes to exams. Now, as we come to the end of this lesson, everyone, I want to remind you that if you couldn't stick around forever and ever, that's okay. This will be posted again. And if you are really interested in giving StudyClix a whirl and a swirl, I suggest that you do. They've got amazing study resources. They've got flashcards, quizzes, so many different things that I would love for you all to try. And again, if you want to give it a go and you want to use my discount codes, they are in the live stream from Tuesday. You can find it on my YouTube page. You can't miss it. And there in the video, if you scroll to find a section where we're playing with the animals, you'll see them on screen. There'll be a collection of animals. You will see I will reveal some discount codes that you can use to use the full platform to get a discount on doing that. It's really worthwhile. And I hope that you've all enjoyed this session, everybody. I will be doing more live lessons throughout this September period as well. And so keep your eyes peeled on my social media because I post about it and I'll let you know, put your notifications on because the moment I go live, you can see me and you can hear me and you'll be able to follow along. And if you can't make the live lessons, don't stress. All of them are going to be uploaded straight to YouTube for you to watch as many times as you need during this exam season. I've appreciated teaching you all this evening, and I will see you all again soon, everyone. Bye.